Welcome back to the Boogeyman 45 channel. I'm sure you already know by the title of this video, but it's time to rank and reflect on the Monster High webisodes. I'll try to keep the introductions on what Monster High is brief, but let me establish some context. In 2010, Mattel created the Monster High franchise, and to promote their dolls, a web series was made. The series was produced using Flash animation by Wild Brain Entertainment from 2010 to 2012, and 6-point harness from 2013 onwards. These webisodes ranged from a minute to a few minutes in length, focusing on the franchise's characters. Monster High's web series ran from 2010 up until G1's cancellation in 2015, and in that time frame, 6 seasons were made. Today, I'm going to be ranking each of these seasons from worst to best. Before I start, I'd like to say that this is all my opinion. I don't claim to be the judge of objective quality about this show. This is really just about how the series made me feel. So if I dislike a season that you really like, or vice versa, well...
Too bad! So sad!
With that out of the way, let us commence the ranking. Like and subscribe and stuff, and turn on post notifications. The humble beginnings of Monster High. Volume 1 was the web series' first season, and I generally consider it to be its worst. Similar to New Ghoul at School, this entry came out during a time where Monster High was still settling on its identity, and it definitely shows. In terms of an overarching narrative, Volume 1 doesn't have any, instead being entirely episodic. I don't have a problem with an episodic approach to storytelling on principle. It can be a very good way of building a world and interesting characters. Take Ever After High for example. While most episodes were self-contained, with special event episodes here and there, it still built upon the characters and got us invested in their lives. But Volume 1 of Monster High didn't do that for me. It felt like I got to know the base traits of the characters, but not much else. I don't think this season needed a grand overarching plot to be good, but the characters were pretty inconsistent. I'll get to that later. Monster High is no stranger to continuity issues, but there are a lot of things established in this volume that do not carry over to the following seasons or movies. For example, in the webisode Party Planners, the ghouls throw Draculaura a surprise party for her 1600th birthday and Frankie's 16th day of being alive respectively. However, this is directly retconned in the film Why Do Ghouls Fall in Love, whose premise centers around Draculaura sweet 1600. And based off of New Ghoul at School taking place over the course of a school week, Frankie should be way older than 16 days, but I don't blame this volume for that fault specifically. Frankie's age was never consistent in G1, so. The webisode Fear Squad has Draculaura and Laguna be part of the Fear-leaning team, which is directly contradicted in the next volume, where Draculaura isn't a part of the squad at first, and Laguna is never shown to have participated in the cheer team. These aren't the main issues I have with the season. My main problem is the writing. The characterization of the main cast feels very off this season compared to all other G1 media. Cleo Denial serves as the sort of antagonist of this season, but she's very inconsistent in that antagonism. She flip-flops between trying to sabotage the main ghouls to being a part of the group. I'm also not a fan of how they treated Ghoulia this season. If you've seen my YouTube short ranking the main ghouls, you'll know that Ghoulia is my favorite of the main cast, so it was annoying to see her being used as the butt of so many jokes and treated like she was stupid. I much prefer how Ghoulia is written later on, where she is a nerd, yes, but she isn't made to be the odd one out of the group, and gets to do cool things involving her smarts. Also, in one webisode, she has this really weird filter over her voice. I'm glad they dropped it, cause it's just weird. To be charitable for just a moment, there are some scenes that I found funny this season.
I want to thank you guys for sticking by me during this trying time. What? What's wrong? You don't got it.
Never works. Sometimes being a vampire really sucks.
How do I look? Amazing. Gorgeous. You always do. I know, right? It's a curse.
My least favorite webisode of this volume is Shock and Awesome. The ghouls learn that Frankie has never seen a movie before, so they rush her to the school's auditorium to get her the perfect movie-going experience. But when Laguna overloads the room's circuitry and the power goes out, the ghouls use Frankie to power the projector, and watch the movie while she's stuck staring at the back wall. It doesn't feel in character for the Goulds to disregard Frankie, let alone anyone like that other than maybe Toralei or Nephra. But still, Frankie didn't do anything to deserve that treatment, so that's why I don't like that episode. Like New Ghoul at School, Volume 1 has a lot of experimentation in terms of animation. There are many webisodes that try out different perspectives and angles, most looking really goofy if I'm going to be honest. Some of them did have charm though, but others I'm very much glad didn't show up again. Overall, I feel Volume 1 is kind of whatever. It's got a lot of funny moments between the characters and some episodes I found enjoyable, but it's still in that beginning stage of Monster High where it wasn't entirely settled on everything character-wise or writing-wise. For those reasons, I feel this is the weakest season of the webisodes. The final volume of the web series, Volume 6 has a shockingly low amount of episodes, at only 6, being the shortest of all the volumes. By the time of the season's release in 2015, G1 had already begun its decline, and the G2 reboot was right around the corner. I assume that's why they shortened the episode count this season, as they knew G1 wasn't going to last much longer. In terms of movies released alongside this volume, the only ones were Boo York, and Great Scary Reef. With its 6 episodes, Volume 6 covers 2 story arcs. The first 3 episodes serve to promote the Freak du Chic doll line, one of my all-time favorite Monster High lines, that introduces circus ghoul Calliope Jellington. When Monster High's grumpy accountant, Mr. Grunderson, plans to cut the school's art programs, Calliope inspires the ghouls to put on a big circus performance to save the arts. The story itself, while a good premise, really lacked the time needed to flesh out the plot and conflict fully. Its entire attention hinges on the threat of the arts getting pulled from school, but besides Honey Swamp and maybe some other students, the importance of the art programs hasn't been established as integral to most of the characters' lives outside of this story. If this was made into a full-length special, then perhaps these issues could have been remedied, but as is, Freak du Chic is heavily limited by its webisode format. Despite that, however, seeing Calliope in the Freak du Chic outfits in animated form was a treat. Strangely, Claudine and Twyla's looks from the line were excluded, but perhaps it's better for Claudine that they didn't. After Freak du Chic is the From Fear to There 2-parter, which introduces Batsy Claro, Izzy Dawn Dancer, and Kirsty Trollson. Their designs are stellar, of course, but I do have a problem with these episodes. This 2-parter suffers from an issue that I will now call Buy the Doll Syndrome, which started to affect the web series around Volume 3 or so. It goes like this. A character appears in a webisode, we learn their name, their monster type, and 1 or 2 personality traits that define them. And immediately after that, they either disappear or become a recurring character, which is the less likely option. This makes sense as the series was made to sell dolls, but still, it's a shame having all these cool characters being introduced but not getting the spotlight they deserve. However, I do see the potential of this problem getting fixed, as in the new IDW Pride comic, Kirsty Trollson actually made an appearance in a story with Ghoulia, which goes to show that these characters aren't inherently flawed, they just need good stories to go along with them. The final episode of this volume, and the web series as a whole, is Decomposition Class. As punishment for goofing off, Mr. Rodder makes his class write an essay about why they think they belong at Monster High. Rather than writing an essay, Frankie gets everyone together to make a video of every student recounting what they love about Monster High. The video is sweet, so sweet in fact that it brings Mr. Rodder to tears, and for the first time in his teaching career,
A's for everyone!
It's very nice that this last episode reflects on the essence of Monster High, and the message of acceptance. It may not be the ending I wished for the web series, but it was still nice. Also, Lorna Loch-Ness got the last line of the show. Overall, while I don't feel as negatively about Volume 6 as I did Volume 1, I still put it this low due to the sheer lack of content. Maybe in some other realm or timeline, there exists a web series for G1 that got a proper conclusion, but that's not the world we live in. Okay, this is the big one, and I mean literally the big one. Volume 3 of the series is by far the longest season of the whole show. with a whopping 55 episodes. This season ran from December 2011 to December 2013. To put that into perspective, there were 6 movies that were released over the course of this volume's run. Why Do Ghouls Fall in Love, Skull Shores, Friday Night Frights, Ghouls Rule, Scare Us, and 13 Wishes all happen within this volume's time frame, which is absolutely insane. After Volume 2, a season which had an overarching narrative, Volume 3 decided to go back to the episodic story format of Volume 1. With 55 episodes, they had a lot of room for stories to tell, and not all of them were great. If you're familiar with the expression, throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, this season is the embodiment of that. I kid you not. There is an episode of this season where the school gets infected with cooties. Cooties. I never want to hear it said again that G1 was dark, edgy, and mature when there is an episode where they get cooties. They also did a parody of The Breakfast Club, which was whatever. There was an episode where a flower gets left in Cleo's locker, and Deuce thinks it was Claude who left it, so they almost get into a fight. But it turns out the flower is a new student, and he badmouths Cleo, so Claude and Deuce jump him.
So, I don't have a secret admirer?
Ha! Too tall, no foliage, and your roots are showing.
Bro, he just insulted your ghoul. Come on.
3 guys brawling over me? The perfect day.
There's an episode where Frankie and Draculaura suspect there are aliens at the school, which is funny in retrospect because this turned out to be true when Astronova showed up. Like, stuff was just happening in this season, man. During my rewatch of this volume, episodes started to blend together so much that I would kind of forget what I was watching. It felt like my brain was turning gelatinous, slowly melting away as I watched more and more. But I had to lock in and get this video done. Like I mentioned before, this volume covered a lot of time in the Monster High universe, so naturally many characters were introduced here or made their first web series appearances. And I'm gonna list them all because that's fun. Howleen Wolf, Venus McFlytrap, Rebecca Steam, Rochelle Goyle, Gory Fangtel, Romulus, Scara Screams, who gained sentience this season, C.A. Cupid, Skeleta Calaveras, Jennifer Long, Invisibility, Finnegan Wake, and Johnny Spirit. The events of 13 Wishes technically take place during this volume, but the characters from it don't appear until Volume 4. Despite my rant from before on the amount of sludge in this season, it actually still has some of my favorite episodes. The Halls Have Eyes focuses on Rochelle becoming the school's hall monitor. Fright Dance is a sweet story centering around Invisibility helping Rochelle at a dance audition. Which Laguna is at? Ghost with Dirty Faces is a fun noir-style story where Spectre tries to clear Heath's name. Scaravoyant involves the ghouls getting Invisibility and Scara to confess their feelings for each other. Unlife to Live has Ghoulia running around the school saving the day like a superhero, complete with her own brain bat signal. The 9 Lives of Toralei details a, possibly fictional, account of Toralai's backstory. We learn how she grew up alone on the streets, went to prison where she met Meowlody and Persephone, and got taken into Monster High by Headmistress Bloodgood. Side tangent, but earlier I mentioned how Monster High has a lot of continuity problems, and there's a pretty funny one here. When Toralei arrives at Monster High for the first time, Abby is seen sitting with the ghouls welcoming Toralei to the school. However, Abby first arrived at Monster High in episode 23 of Volume 2, long after Toralei's first appearance in the premiere of Volume 2. Okay, tangent over. My favorite episode of this volume has to be Boo Year's Eve. In this episode, it's, well, New Year's Eve, and Frankie is anxious about the new year, so anxious in fact that she manages to stop time somehow. The only one who can still move besides her is Heath, who shows her that the future can be exciting, and that fear isn't always a bad thing. I really like the message of this episode, and Frankie and Heath are a unique character combination I wasn't expecting, and I heavily relate to Frankie about fearing the future now that I'm an adult in college. To sum up, Volume 3 is a very long season that has a lot of middling episodes, but when the episodes are good, they're some of my favorites in the show. Volume 5 is the season I view as the turning point for the web series. The previous season, Volume 4, had 30 episodes, while this season only has 10. It kind of shocked me at first how short this season was, but it makes sense. 2014 was the year Monster High sales began to decline. It makes sense that they tried to save money by cutting back on the webisodes. Other than the episode count, the biggest change that Volume 5 brought about was the visuals. The quality of animation improved greatly, with the episodes making better use of lighting effects. Many other elements had their designs refreshed as well. The outside of the school was remodeled to look more like the movies outside of the school, and a lot of characters had their designs redone or altered in some way. To list all the changes, Operetta's hairstyle was changed to more closely reflect her doll. Ghoulia's hair is a bit more wavy and loose. Laguna's face and hair were completely redone. Cleo's ears are now visible. And there's probably other things that I'm not recalling. But the most noticeable change of all that I've heard many people speak about is Frankie's face overhaul. The thing that stands out to me the most about her new look is her eyes. On the old rig, her pupils were more of an oval shape, while in the new look they are circular. Her face as a whole looks softer, with her brow and cheekbone rounded out. The look of her nose changed as well, the color of the outline changing from black to the color of the outline of her face. I don't necessarily hate these changes, but the sudden change kind of gave me the same vibe as when your friend who always wears glasses takes them off and their face looks really different. Volume 5 also features a new intro to match the change of the brand's theme song, from the Fright song to We Are Monster High. It took some time to grow on me, but I actually prefer this intro's visuals to the previous. The Fright song will forever be my favorite Monster High intro, but the editing in the Volume 5 intro is a lot better than the previous, and there's lots of cool scene transitions and effects throughout. In terms of story, this season has 2 arcs. The first takes place over the course of 2 episodes, introducing Cast the Fierce, whose design is sick. The second episode, I Cast a Spell on You, is the only episode of the web series to be double length, running a total of 6 minutes. The story was pretty fun. We got a new song, The Witching Hour, and classic Toralei shenanigans. The second story arc of the season is the Monster Exchange event and the Gloom and Bloom dance. This gives us new characters, but also sends ones we know elsewhere. Draculaura goes to Shibuya, Japan, Laguna goes to Madrid, Spain, and Abby goes to Monster Pichu. Coming to the school, we have Lorna McNessie, the daughter of the Loch Ness Monster, who loves photobombing pictures. Her unique gimmick, design, and friendship with Gil made her my favorite of the exchange student. The other exchange student is Marisol Kochi, Abby's cousin and the daughter of the South American Bigfoot. I'm not a big fan of her, honestly. I don't find feet jokes very funny. The Gloom and Bloom dance 2-parter brought an interesting story for Gil and Laguna. When Lorna's boyfriend breaks up with her, Gil brings Lorna to the date as a friend. But surprise, Laguna comes back from Madrid and gets the wrong idea.
Guess who's back from Shibuya? Totes awkward.
Your typical Laguna-Gil drama ensues, but I actually like it here. Gil explains to Laguna why he took Lorna to the dance, and they make up and dance together. Happy ending, hooray! However, with the Gloom and Bloom dance brings the corpse flower, and from the flower's bud sprouts Amanita Nightshade.
A party for me? You shouldn't have. Well, I suppose you should have, actually. I'm kind of a big deal.
Her introduction brings in really interesting information from Cleo's past, and she plays really well as a foil to Cleo. However, my praise has to stop there, as unfortunately, not even the Amanita Nightshade was free from Buy the Doll syndrome. After the season finale, Bad Tombmates, Amanita does not appear again. Granted, the web series was basically over by this point, but it's still disappointing to me. Also, a friend pointed out to me how much Amanita sounds like G3 Cleo, and I haven't been able to unhear it since.
Cleo denial. Long time no see. Give me a chance. If you give me a pet, I'll give it everything it wants and needs. Promise.
How about scare?
Hello, Cleo.
Speaking of G3, there's an episode where Frankie falls on the corpse flower, crushing it.
Our centennial corpse flower only blooms after 100 years of careful gardening.
So, Amanita is probably dead in that universe. Overall, I'd largely consider Volume 5 to be a decent season. I don't think that it reaches the highs of the episodes that I liked in Volume 3, but it has the benefit of not reaching that season's lows either. imagine the comments are gonna cook me for not having this in first place, but let me hear me out. Volume 2 is really good. It's the only season of the web series that you could say has an overarching plot all the way through. This season is the longest behind Volume 3, with a total of 36 episodes, which I feel it makes good use of. For movies, none came out during Volume 2's duration, but Fridawn takes place right after. I believe that the movies not having taken off yet contributes to why this volume was much more serialized than the last, and also why Volume 3 returned to an episodic format. The story of Volume 2 centers around the Monster Nationals, a large Fear Squad competition that the ghouls spend the season preparing for. Every episode is tied to this plotline in some way, with subplots to introduce more characters. I feel this season does a much better job characterizing the ghouls and their personalities than the last. For example, Frankie's eagerness to help Cleo with the Fear Squad displays her determined and naive nature. Claudine's refusal to accept Claude dating Draculaura demonstrates how she can be overprotective. It really feels like you get to know the ghouls a lot better this season. Speaking of the major plot threads in the season, one major change that occurs is Cleo permanently joining the main ghouls. I wouldn't exactly call it a redemption per se. In Volume 1, Cleo was very on and off about whether she was friends with the ghouls or not. It really depended on the episode. But I liked seeing her properly join the squad and stepping out of the villain role from the season. I guess this is a good segue to talk about all the newly introduced characters, beginning with Toralei Stripe. Toralei and her lackeys Malady and Persephone serve as the antagonists for this season, and I think they do a pretty good job. Toralei doesn't have any grand motivations to take over the world or anything. She just likes messing with the main cast, which I can respect.
Perfect shot for the fear bug.
Our other antagonist for this season is Nephra, Cleo's sister. She's a good foil to our mean girl Mummy, and helps her to look better in comparison, but I much prefer Toralei as a villain. On to our next character, or rather characters, are Jackson Jekyll and Holt Hyde. I like the arc that they go through with Frankie this season. She goes from wanting to date both of them to basically acting like their mom.
She was only hanging out with you because I didn't show up. And we all know whose fault that is.
She was gonna break up with you.
She was gonna break up with you. Frankie!
Jackson and Holt's bickering once they find out that they're the same person is pretty funny. I can understand why Frankie never wanted to date them again though. Slightly unrelated, but I found both Jackson and Holt's voices pretty grating here.
Hey, if you'd give me another chance, I'd love to take you out. Yo, Frankie! Yeah!
In the movies, their voices are much deeper.
Oh, this is so awesome! I can't believe nobody's picking up it! Frankie, fine! Don't leave me!
But here, it sounds like they're middle schoolers. It's made even more odd by the fact that every other male character has a male voice actor. Cindy Robinson is still goated though, I'm just saying.
Damsels and gentlemen, prepare to be spellbound, and behold, the biggest cup of tea ever after!
The next character to appear this season is Spectra Vondergeist, one of my personal favorite Monster High characters. Her introduction is pretty drip-fed compared to most other characters, popping in and out and collecting gossip on the ghouls before she's even properly named. It takes the squad baiting her out with their diaries for her to reveal herself.
My given name is Spectra Vondergeist.
I think it's pretty funny, the idea for Spectra as a character. A literal ghostwriter. Like, that creative stuff is what I love about Monster High. My favorite character introduced this season is hands down Abby Abominable. I absolutely love Abby. Straight man characters always check that box for me in shows, and I love her sense of humor as well. The plotline she gets with being misunderstood by everyone was pretty funny, but also sad in a way because I felt bad for no one understanding her. But her roasting the main cast was funny.
Your eyebrows, they are like mountain. You are short, like baby yak. This outfit, I think you try much too hard.
Daughter of the Phantom of the Opera, Operetta makes her first appearance here, in a mix-up love triangle plotline with Cleo and Deuce. I really like Operetta this season. She's got this unique attitude, not exactly a mean girl, but definitely willing to get back at those who wrong her. Cindy Robinson absolutely kills it with her voice as well.
I figure Cleo must pay, so I'm gonna take her man, just 'cause I can.
Another part I liked about her plotline is that it brought Deuce into the fray as an actual character. Before this point, I felt like Deuce was basically an accessory to Cleo, but through his interactions with Operetta, we got a better peek into his mind and how he struggles with expressing himself.
And you told her how you feel?
I got a hard time expressing my feelings and stuff, and when I try, I just fumble all over my words.
And with Operetta's help, he made a song for Cleo, which was pretty cute, though I wish we got to actually hear it. And how could I forget the one and only Hoodooed Voodoo, who goes through a lot in this season. He's brought to life, dumped almost instantly, gets dumped again.
Wait, so I'm not the third?
Sorry.
Unbelievable! Why does this keep happening to me? Oh, my chest!
Poor dude can't catch a break. Before I get to my negatives for this volume, I want to talk about the finale. Finally, at the Monster Nationals, the ghouls are up against Nephra and Toralei, and they have to deal with Nephra trying to thwart their performance. But luckily, all the characters that have been introduced this season help to stop Nephra. Even Toralei and her crew help out. It felt like everything came full circle and wrapped up pretty well. This is the only season of the web series to feel like it has a proper conclusion. On to the negatives. My biggest complaint with this season is mainly the pacing. Parts of the story did drag for me, primarily the beginning and the Gloom Beach portion. Another pacing problem I had, but not in a story way, more of an editing way, was the way scenes were cut together. Due to the 2 to 3 minute length of the episodes, they have to cram in a lot of story stuff into a small time frame, and sometimes it really shows. Let me just show you some clips.
What's the square root of 568?
23.832. Hey!
Laguna, what's wrong?
It's Gil. His parents were so mad they sent him away to another school.
Laguna! Hey, Jackson. At the Fear Leading Academy.
All our time.
Every year, with the routine you and Gulia came up with, we can't be beat. No thanks to Scary.
Other than that, I don't have much else negative to say about Volume 2. Now it's the part where I explain why this isn't at the #1 spot. Simply put, I just prefer the writing style of the later seasons compared to earlier. I do appreciate the story given to us here, but the pacing could drag at times, and that kind of stopped me from fully enjoying it, but I still think it's a great season. It might be a hot take to have this season at #1, but no one else yet has made a webisode ranking video, so I reign supreme. Released November 2013 to March 2015, Volume 4 ran for a total of 30 episodes, which is pretty close to the median amount for the series. Chronologically, this season takes place around the same time as Fright's Camera Action and Freaky Fusion. Also, the anime released around this time. Video on that, maybe? Many movie-introduced characters appear this season, including Twyla, Gigi, Elizabeth, Viperine, Honey, Caddy Noir, Claudia Wolf, Serena Von Boo, and Nathan Rott. There's also Iris, who gains sentience this season, which is pretty cool. The beginning of this season focuses primarily on Jane Boolittle, who looks after all the creature critters which are heavily promoted this season.
Welcome to the crypt.
I didn't think much of her as a character, and I don't really care for when Monster High tries to focus on the pets, through all generations really. Her story was probably the weakest aspect of this season for me. Everything else though I loved. Like I mentioned earlier, Iris gains sentience in this volume and her outfit changes slightly to match. I like the voice Paula Rhodes gave her.
It's silly. I'm a woman of science, and Manny, well, he's Manny.
Her and Manny get a plotline about falling for each other and their relationship problems. Usually I don't care for romance in Monster High, but I thought their relationship was cute. The other webisodes in this volume are fun as well. A little Scooby-Doo type adventure in Twyla's Boogie Mansion, Caddy Noir joining Invisibility in Twyla's Disappearing Club, the iconic zombie shake. There's a lot to love in this season. I think the reason I have Volume 4 above 2 is purely because I prefer this era of Monster High. All of my favorite characters are here, and the writing style is solidified enough to where the one-off stories don't feel as disjointed. While Volume 2 does have a superior story, it's that element that makes me not revisit it as much. It does have episodes you can just randomly pick through, but most of them are building towards a narrative, so sometimes it's not a complete story being told in each episode. Meanwhile, Volume 4 has more rewatchability, as I can pick a random episode and just be set. Overall, I feel that Volume 2 may be better from a story standpoint, but I get more enjoyment out of Volume 4. So, Volume 4 wins, hooray, yay! Well, we've ranked every volume of the G1 web series. I honestly struggled to place the top 3 on this list. I can see arguments for Volume 2 being over 4 and vice versa, but it really just depends on what I'm into at the moment. What do you all think about the webisodes? Let me know in the comments. For a future video, I want to talk about all the commercials across the generations, so stay tuned for that. But first, I want to talk about the black sheep of the Monster High franchise. The generation that almost killed the series. I'm talking the G2 reboot.